Hi, I'm Drew Conry-Murray from the Packet Pushers. We are here at AutoCon 3 in Prague. I'm joined by Mike Haugh from Gluware. Mike, you just got off the stage. Gluware had a couple of big announcements at AutoCon 3. Can you give us the overview?
Yeah, it's great to be here. I mean, Prague's an exciting city and a beautiful European city, so very, very happy to be here. And, Gluware is an automation company, so that's all we do, so it's a really native, good fit for us. What we announced, because, the AutoCon community is a community of builders, I would say, more than, just only network engineers. So the announcements we put in place are the announcement of a builder program called Gluware Labs. Gluware Labs, we derived our name because we have an IDE called Gluware Lab.
Okay.
So that's kind of the genesis, is that there is an IDE called Gluware Lab. The Gluware Labs program is a bigger umbrella because it encompasses community edition software, which is free access to our software, starting with our no-code app suite, and then community members will get access to the IDE itself as well. We have the Dev AI Copilot, which again, everyone needs an AI Copilot these days. So, Gluware is based on, the coding side of it is based on like JSON and JavaScript, but it is kind of a domain specific. It's our flavor of it.
So this is an LLM. I can query and ask questions and get information back based on Gluware documentation and best practices.
Well, exactly. In fact, the LLM and the Dev Copilot, you can ask it, let's say you want to build an abstraction of a network feature. You can tell it, build me a form that gives me parameters for AAA or SNMP. And like, if you describe it, it will generate a data model, which is, and ultimately it's JSON, but like you can build with it. So that the AI piece of it is really exciting to build faster. But there's other tools that we're incorporating. Like, for example, we believe our IDE is the best place because it is a fully inclusive build, test, deploy environment. But you have, I'll say developers, but I'm going to use the term automation builders. And I want to dive into that. But
yeah,
with VS Code, it's a really popular IDE out there. So we're putting out extensions so people can develop Gluware content directly within VS Code and publish it. And that's another feature we had to introduce, which is Get integration that we've announced. And so we have Get integration in two ways. Our app suite constructs can sync into Get. That's kind of like, the whole infrastructure as code thing. If you're building something in code, I want to be able to see it in code. So it helps.
You want to Git repo, and so
yeah, it's openness, it's transparency, and it also gives you sync and also like restore. So that's super important. But when you're working in an IDE like VS Code, you push into Get, and then you can go directly from Get into the operational model, which we'll talk about. But Gluware Labs program is really exciting. It's about enabling folks to understand our no-code app suite, but also understand the building side of Gluware, that we're an open platform.
Okay. Now, you also, one of the other announcements was an integration with Ansible, which is a very popular tool for network automation.
Yeah, this one's really exciting because within the last year, we had a private equity firm invest in Gluware, and that on the board of that private equity firm, or part of it, is the founder of Ansible, Saeed, who is now on our board.
Okay.
And through discussions, we were really kind of talking about the fact that usually when Ansible is in an enterprise account, it's a separate island of automation than Gluware. As we know, islands of automation, you can have your use case based, but when you can begin to integrate islands, it really is just far more productive. And he really helped us see and be able to communicate how complementary the two can be. So through working with him, and he put us in contact with Ansible and Red Hat and the Ansible automation team, and that Ansible automation platform, we're really able to understand how the two could work really well in a complementary fashion. So through that, we developed an Ansible collection that has now gone through certification. Because if you really want to be part of the Ansible community and the Ansible automation platform, you need to get certified. Otherwise, people may not take your content seriously or whatnot. So we've gone through the certification process, and through doing so, also became a partner with Red Hat. So it's very exciting for us because I think we both believe that better together is a great story, and we're very complementary solutions. So yeah, that's a big one for us.
So does this mean if I can incorporate aspects of Gluware into an Ansible playbook, for example?
Exactly. So So let's say you're using Ansible, and you started out with like a Cisco module, and you're doing some basic automation, and you're also using Ansible for your server automation. But then you have complex use cases, and again, that's where the Gluware strength is. And so within a playbook, you can call a Gluware module and completely invoke a whole Gluware operation that does complex, automation tasks. And so there's a long laundry list of them that you can do, but the typical highlights are like you can invoke Gluware to drift and audit your network. Gluware is scalable and very reliable, and so you don't have to wait for something to execute a really long time. And then again, back to the complex use cases like iOS upgrades, where there's lots of conditionals and waits and loops. You wouldn't really want to do that in a playbook. You'd rather offload it to Gluware and do that sort of.
So it runs through the playbook, through Ansible, hits the Gluware segment. Gluware handles some of more of that complex capability, and then ties back into the rest of the workbook to complete the job.
Exactly. Tying to Gluware for the complex network automation is kind of the theme of it.
Okay. So, Gluware builds itself as an automation platform. How do you contrast that to sort of the DIY cat herd, a bunch of tools?
Yeah. Being at this conference, and I've been, aware of it for quite a few years, is that as someone who is a network engineer and starts looking into automation, Stanzi did the automation landscape. There are so many tools out there and tools being added all the time. And one of the concepts that I notice is that people automate because they have a pain point they're trying to resolve. And it's usually a personal pain point, like I was talking about on stage, which is, configuring lots of routers by hand, or trying to ensure you're staying within a compliance so you don't get in trouble. So you're trying to work smarter, right? But if you cannot take automation you're building, and I like to use the phrase democratize it, meaning really make it available to others to use. And if you can't operationalize it, which is like really being able to hand it over to operations to run it. So
that's a serious test. Can I let somebody else with very little background or information run this automation workflow that I've developed?
Exactly. And I think that's where Gluware is really strong, and that we offer a fully integrated stack where they can build automations directly within the UI with no coding. And it's fully democratized, and it's in a platform with role-based access control and logging and all the things you want to tick to be operationalized. I mean, when you kick off a job and you send it to 500 devices, Gluware is going to handle that, And it also, we have something in our platform we call the dial layer, device automation interaction layer. We do all the drivers to all the vendors and have the SSH CLI handling, and we have API integration. So you don't have to, in the builder side, if you're going to go grab a bunch of open source tools, you're going to be in Python, you're going to be load package, and it's going to be overwhelming the number of things you're going to have to pull in when you start getting complicated. So
I think people going the individual route start to realize I'm kind of like maintaining a whole bunch of software here that maybe I didn't want to be part of my job.
Exactly. When we were recording the Packet Pushers podcast earlier, we were talking about the hero. Like, you may automate something and solve a problem, but then where do you go from there? Like, what's the path? So Gluware is one really strong platform, but regardless, I think you have to embrace a platform and enable consolidation onto something common. Because the problem that we see a lot is management is less technical than they have been historically. So they're basically saying automate, and automate is good, but they're not saying how, and they're not enforcing standards. And you will have every group, maybe even every individual, doing their own thing. And that's where software development and standardization is really important. And so, like, as a router engineer, as a network engineer doing routing code, or like, again, I call it code, but CLI, you'll develop standards. This is my SNMP policy. This is my AAA policy. And you will share those standards and say, this is how we do it. And it's very discrete. Now, you will have variation from vendor to vendor, but ultimately the policy you're doing for the protocol is consistent. In the automation space, there are so many design decisions you can make, how you build your schema, where you store your data, if you hard code values or you make them variables. There's just so many decisions to make. If there are not standards and someone kind of leading and enforcing and saying, hey, let's all do good practices and let's all sync to GitHub and let's all version control. That's what's changing right now.
So the platform sort of provides some of that structure that you might want around an automation strategy.
Absolutely. The structure for it, as well as the ability to operationalize it.
But without cutting off people, like you mentioned the Ansible integration, you provide links to Git. You've also got a Netbox integration. You're not also trying to wall off the team.
That's been something incredibly important to Gluware, is that we really have no choice, but we have to meet them where they're at. And so if we walk into an environment and, if they have networking vendors, we have to support those vendors. If they use Netbox as a source of truth, we have to do that. If they have ServiceNow for an ITSM, if they have even a custom database, if they have an API call to it, we can integrate. But we have to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And almost always there is some level of scripts or playbooks that have been written. And either they want to migrate away from them, or they want to, wrap orchestration around and keep them. So it really are all decisions, but typically it's just use case driven. And if you have a use case like Ansible scripts that go and validate servers or do health checks, that is complementary to making a protocol change on the network. It's very highly complementary, and it can all work together, driven through one platform.
So Mike, last question. Do you feel like then Gluware is a platform, is it for the network engineer or for the automation builder?
Well, now it's really important to address both, because it's kind of a by decision where both personas have very strong opinions, and you need to get the sign off from both to actually implement, because it's a change when you introduce a new platform. And so we have the no code app suite for the network engineer who doesn't want to code, and we have the full developer builder tools for those who want to make sure the platform's open, they can onboard whatever they want to do and really make it their own. So really both are important now.
So if folks want to play around with Gluware, try the community edition, where should they go?
Yeah, through Gluware.com, you can sign up for the community edition. Through that, you get our free software. There's free training, and you can join our Discord group for support. Community edition, and just reach out to Gluware.com.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for being here, and thanks to Gluware for being a sponsor of Packet Pushers. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate everybody's attention and time. If you want more great content, technical content from the Packet Pushers, head on over to packetpushers.net. We've got a Slack community. We have a ton of podcasts. We're doing more on YouTube. We have a Slack channel if you want to talk to us on Slack. You can follow us on LinkedIn, all that good stuff. Packetpushers.net. Thanks for watching.